please. Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Board Member Dyer.
Here.
Board Member Goodhue.
Here.
Board Member Pomeroy.
Here. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm here.
Chair Croman.
Here.
And Carol Hall is absent.
Okay, will you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, are there any members of the public who would like to bring any issues not on the agenda before the board? Okay, hearing none. Are there any announcements? Hearing none, we'll begin the public hearings. So we'll start with the HE 23-097 Hoppus House Incorporated.
Great. Well, good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. Before you this afternoon is the consideration of two historic evaluations. One is for a single-family residence that we're referring to as Donna Hofsa's house, and the other is for the Hofsa's House Hotel. So the hotel is located on the west side of San Carlos Street at the intersection of San Carlos and Camino del Monte. The single-family residence is located on the Dolores Street frontage, northeast of 4th Avenue. Both the hotel and the residence are located within a portion of Block 34. They occupy a total of 36,200 square feet on 2 lots of record. The main hotel building and the single-family residence occupy the larger parcel, which is just over 28,000 square feet. And what we're calling the North Wing addition occupies an 8,000 square foot parcel. So in my presentation this evening, I'm gonna discuss the single family residence first, and then we'll discuss the hotel after that. So starting with Donna Hofsa's house, the residence was constructed in 1960. Again, it is a single-family dwelling that's located on the larger of the 2 hotel parcels. It has served as the manager's house over the years. And in 2002, the house was evaluated by Richard Janik for potential historical significance. Mr. Janik did conclude that the home met the eligibility criteria to be listed as a historic resource. However, at that time, the residence was 42 years old, not quite 50, and so I suspect that's why it was never officially listed on the local historic inventory, although I don't know that for certain. But in 2023, we had the opportunity to evaluate the home again, this time by Meg Clovis. She also concluded that the home was historically significant. It is now 63 years of age. The home is identified as a regional expressionist style of architecture. This was an era post-1950s where a demonstration of new technology and construction techniques to modern buildings were being employed. And I neglected to mention in Mr. Janik's report and again in Ms. Clovis's report, it was identified that the hyperbolic parabola roof is a significant architectural feature of this residence and is the only one of its kind in Carmel. So Carmel's Historic Preservation Ordinance is contained in Chapter 17.32 of the Carmel Municipal Code. This sets forth the eligibility criteria when evaluating a structure for historical significance. The first criteria is that it should be representative of at least one theme in the historic context statement. This single-family residence does represent the theme of architectural development in Carmel. It also must retain substantial integrity, and both in the 2002 Mr. Janik report and then as well as the 2023 Ms. Clovis report, the residence does retain substantial integrity. It has had a few modifications over the years, but most significantly, the roof is still intact in its original form. The third criteria is that it should be at least 50 years of age. As I mentioned, the house is now 63. And then it also shall meet one of the following, and I'm gonna kind of go through these individually on the next few slides. So the first criteria or sub-criteria is whether or not it's associated with a significant event. No significant event that we're aware of led to the construction of the residence, nor took place there. So the residence does not meet criteria 1. Under the criteria 2, it's associated with persons important to local, California, or national history. Under this category, the person must be considered significant within Carmel's historic context, made certain contributions or played a role that was deemed significant, and those contributions are compared to others in the same sphere of influence. There's no indication in the record that Donna Hofsa has played an outstanding role in the Carmel community when compared to her peers, so we found that it does not meet criteria 2. However, under criteria 3, embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, method of construction, the work of a master, or possesses high artistic values. Contractor Ralph Steen, who built the residence, is recognized as significant in the context statement. The home is also a good example of the regional expressionist style, which is also recognized as significant in our updated historic context statement. And again, it's the only example of a hyperbolic parabola roof in Carmel. So under this criteria, it does meet criteria number 3. Number 4 has to do with information regarding prehistory or history, and this one is not applicable. So in order for a property to be listed on the historic inventory, it does not have to meet all of the listed criteria. However, it does meet criteria number 3, which is adequate for listing on the local historic inventory. Staff's recommendation is that the board approve the resolution of designation, which would be recorded with the County of Monterey. So moving on to the Hofsa's House Hotel. In 1957, this was the first expansion of the overnight accommodations, and it consisted of the construction of the 4-story portion of the building, which contains 25 hotel rooms. This is a site plan at the time that the expansion was being applied for with the city. You can see on lot 9, those were the existing buildings on the site at the time. Those rooms were being rented out for overnight accommodations, and those buildings have been incorporated into the larger hotel. The additions are marked by the blue stars. So some of the features of the design of the hotel has often been referred to as a Bavarian theme. The hotel has a clipped gable roof, it has gabled dormers, wide overhanging eaves with visible rafters, some decorative half timbering, and the characteristic pink stucco. The hotel also has some murals throughout. The one on the right, that mural was painted in 1957 by Maxine Albro. It has since been touched up twice by other artists. There are some murals on the building that are unsigned, so their origin the creator is unknown. The hotel, so this is a picture of the rear of the hotel, which shows the 4 stories, private porches, and the bandsawn wood railings. So these are just some of the qualities of that hotel, the 1957 version. Then in around 1968, there was an expansion, which we are referring to as the North Wing. So that's the 8,000 square foot lot that I mentioned. The design of the expansion was similar to the main hotel, with the gable dormers, the decorative half timbering, and the clipped roof feature. Then in 1974, an office addition was constructed over the automobile entrance on the San Carlos elevation, a pretty small addition. So big picture, we are looking at the rear of the hotel looking east. This kind of identifies the different components of the property. So number 1, again, is the location identifier, the intersection of Camino del Monte and San Carlos. Number 2, you can see where the pre-1957 buildings were located. Number 3 reflects the 1957 expansion of the hotel. Number 4 at the bottom of the photo is the single-family residence. Number 5 is the North Wing addition, which you see off to the left of the photo. And then finally, the office addition in 1974, number 6. So again, historic preservation ordinance is contained in chapter 17.32. We just talked about these 4 criteria with Donna Hoff's house, and so I'm going to go through them for you with regards to the hotel as well. So number 1, criteria 1, is it associated with events that have made a significant contribution to local or regional history? So the hotel is one of dozens of tourist serving accommodations. Apologize for the typo there. When evaluating for significance, an example should retain a high degree of integrity. It's also enhanced by its association with a prominent member of the community. In doing the records research, we did not find that Donna Hofsa's distinguished herself among others in a significant fashion in the tourism industry. So we concluded the property does not meet criteria number 1. So criteria number 2, is it associated with the lives of persons important to local California or national history? As we discussed with the house, we didn't find any kind of significant association with Donna Hofsa's. She's not mentioned in the historic context statement for her role in the tourism industry. Muralist Maxine Albro is mentioned in the context statement. However, just the painting of the mural on the hotel property in and of itself doesn't rise to the level of designating the entire property as historic. And her contributions would be best represented by her own residence where she lived during her productive period of life. So we concluded that the property does not meet criteria 2. Criteria 3, again, this one deals with the architecture, the designer, and the artistic values of the property. So again, the architectural style, the design has been referred to as Bavarian themed. This is not a recognized architectural style in our historic context statement. The designer is Robert Jones, and he is a significant individual. He's mentioned in the context statement, but is best known for his contemporary designs. Also, the same contractor that built the single-family residence, Ralph Steen, is also mentioned in the historic context statement. And Ralph is best known for his post-Adobe construction. So we concluded that the property does not meet criteria 3. Again, criteria 4, generally reserved for archaeological sites, and that is not applicable. So in summary, the intensive review conducted by Meg Clovis concluded that the property does not meet the eligibility criteria for listing on the historic inventory. The additional information that was provided by the applicant was considered when conducting the analysis and reaching our conclusion. Therefore, staff's recommendation is that the board issue a determination of ineligibility. So staff is recommending that we list Donna Hoff's house as a historic resource and issue a determination of ineligibility for the hotel. And then just a reminder, all decisions of the board are subject to a 10-day appeal period. So any person aggrieved by any decision made this afternoon can file an appeal, and that appeal period will end on January 10th. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Board, do you have any questions for Marnie? Okay, no questions. We will open it up to public comment, starting with the owner or the owner's representatives, and then we'll have time available for other members of the public to comment.
Afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Anthony Lombardo on behalf of Hofstas. I think everyone has this illustration. It gives a good synopsis of what Carrie's hotel has had happen to it over those decades. I think there's 21 different contractors have worked on projects, and looks like 4 or 5 different architects by the color-coded drawing there. I think that was in the material that we provided. Quite a hodgepodge of different work on the site. As Marnie mentioned, there have been 6 historical experts who have reviewed the Hofstas house. And by the way, just to save time, we have no issue with the home. Yeah, it's clearly, the only thing I'm glad is I don't have to pay to re-roof it someday or actually try and re-roof it, because that's gonna be a project. But just speaking about the hotel, and all 6 experts concluded the same, and one of them is here today. Kent Seavey is sitting behind Carrie and I there in case you have any specific questions. But the building could be generously referred to, or the facade on the street, not the whole building, just the one facade, as a Tudor revival. It's basically described as a decoration on one of the facades of the building. As you know, the building was built in 1957, which was a very good year because that was the year I was built too. But and that's it. But according to the experts, that's too late to be considered revival of anything. That by 1957, the revival movement had ended, and that it's basically a decoration on the front of a motel building that has no historical significance. There have been numerous remodels, as I illustrated on the drawing, or is illustrated on the drawing there. And the murals referred to that were painted on the building, or are painted on the building, referred to as not being the best work of Ms. Albro compared to the work she did like at Coit Tower, and have in fact been repainted at least twice by other people over the years. And in fact are not considered an element of style of a Tudor revival building in any event. They're more associated with buildings in Italy and Switzerland. So I could go on and on with all of the details, but I'll spare you that this afternoon. It's clear that these 6 experts have all reached the same conclusion. They're probably the most highly respected historical consulting experts that we have in Northern California. And so we would respectfully request that you find, consistent with the staff recommendation, that the hotel is not a historic resource. Carrie's here, I'm here, and Kent Seavey are here to answer questions. I believe Mr. Chattle's office is on the Zoom too, if there are any technical questions about that we can't answer. But we appreciate your time this afternoon, and let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
So before we go into the question and answer, I just want to say this board has not been influenced by anybody. If you watch the Friday video, that should not influence you. We're coming to this meeting, coming to the review, completely open-minded, and just only concerning the facts that we've been presented by the planning board and by the owners and their representatives. So with that being said, does anybody have any questions for the owner or their representatives? Okay. Are there other members of the public that would like to comment at this time?
Good evening, I'm David O'Neill. Thank you all for your service. I just wanted to bring a couple of things to light from a different perspective. In regards to the age, it was recently celebrating its 75th anniversary, of course, and that Donna Hofsis was certainly a major factor in developing the tourism here, which is an important part of our community. The architect is on the historical context statement. And artistic value, the media consistently refers to the building as charming, iconic, and a staple to Carmel. The changes. I have just some pictures of a postcard from the 50s that shows the main facade. And it says under the prefix Mayfair, if anybody knows, that's from quite a long time ago. And so it shows that that facade has actually remained intact. When determining a historic structure, we want to take into consideration the totality of it in general. However, when it comes to commercial facilities, quite often the front facade or the main facade is what is the most important part, because usually that's all that we see from the street. So in taking that into consideration, I would suggest that perhaps we consider this historic on that account. And also, about it being not a notable local, I think a lot of us would say that that's not true, because a lot of us know, even some of us who are very new here, know about Donna Hofsis, and also the family, and also the unique and important influence that family has had on our economy here, which has helped develop and nurture our whole community. So thank you for your consideration and appreciate your service.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public that would like to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Kurz. I'm a proud owner of a 1929 Comstock cottage called Curtain Calls, which I very lovingly restored and was one of the first, I think perhaps the first, to list my house on the MILF Act. I think that's correct. I'm also a graduate of Carmel High School and a member of the Carmel Heritage Society. In addition, I revived Joanne Matheson's book, The Comstock Fairy Tale Cottages of Carmel, which I'll hold up here. And thanks to Kent Seavey, he kindly wrote the foreword for me. It's now, the book is now back in publication with another publisher. I'm here to support Carrie and her family, since my stepfather was Fred Hofsis, who built the Hofsis house with Carrie's grandmother. I knew Fred Hofsis for over 20 years, and I am one of his only living relatives. I was also executrix of his estate. And when I read the original historic report, I was really dumbfounded, and I am thrilled to see that it was revised. Fred never in his 20 years ever mentioned anything about Bavaria or Germany. I never heard one word about any relatives or any family coming from there. In fact, he actually hated the hotel business and really never spoke about it. There was not one shred of evidence in his estate that supported this historic classification. If I had to guess, Fred's wife, who worked in Hollywood, got some of her inspiration from set design, certainly not from Fred's family history. The fact that you are still debating this as a historic property is really confusing to me. It is my opinion that you are holding Carrie and her entire family's financial future hostage over a building that is not historic. You have cost this family thousands of dollars, and I know countless of hours worrying about this deliberation. This has been a really big deal. And while they are trying to pry the fate of their private property out of your clutches, it's my hope that in your role as neighbors helping neighbors, and that's why we're here tonight, every one of us, I'm your neighbor, you're my neighbors, every one of us want to do the right thing, that you set Carrie and her family free to create another legacy, a new legacy for her family moving forward, and for this community by building Carmel's first 5-star hotel. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Crow. I'm with La Playa Hotel, and I live 2 blocks down in a house that just turned 100. So safe to say I'm very familiar with historic buildings, and I appreciate them, but I also understand a lot of the challenges. At La Playa, you know, the day could come when we wouldn't be able to run our business if we couldn't make certain changes. It's such a difficult task, and I think that Carrie has faced a lot of those same difficulties with the slope and so many things. As a hotelier, I think that what their family is bringing to our community in their design is a very positive thing. So I very much support their project, and I also appreciate the challenges that they've faced. So I'm hoping that that will get worked out today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please just feel free to come up once the previous speaker's done.
I'm Alan Williams, Chairman, members. I was a neighbor for Donna. I moved in across the street in 1970, so some 40-some years. And I've been lucky enough to design and build things around the peninsula, around Carmel, for the last 50 years. When it comes to historical buildings, I cut my teeth on them here in Carmel. I started on the Leidig building on Ocean and Dolores, and Ocean and San Carlos. I did the La Bistro building, restaurant behind it. We restored it and doubled it in size, kept all the historic, but yet doubled it. The Leidigs like what I did on those buildings, and I went down and actually tore down a gas station, which is controversial at the time, and built the building for them to live in and retire in, where Thinker Toys is, in San Carlos and 7th. We brought heritage forward in that because we tore upon the old little cashier's bin, which is old clinker brick, and we took it all apart and cleaned it up and put it back in the new building. And then Ansel Adams and Jody Litout and myself did the one across the street, the English Tudor. And you can actually find the old service bays on the west end. And by the way, there's underground parking on all those. I did the Eastwood building. I didn't design that building, but I built it and put parking on there, but I did restore the Hog's Breath building. And when you say restore it, you kept it the way it was, but you built it and repaired it and reinforced it, seismic and sprinklers into the future. That's putting new life into it. And probably the biggest restoration I did was Mission Ranch. And that was a 7 to 8 year period, and we eased our way into it. It was going to be torn down. I actually told Mr. Easton how bad it was, and he bought it anyway and told me to fix it. In some place in this whole story, Donna called me up and knew I was doing some of this stuff and asked me to look at her hotel because she's trying to figure out how to put an elevator in it. And that's the time when we were all getting into seismic upgradings and sprinkler systems and everything. And I frankly told her that even with my experience, I couldn't fix what was there the way she wanted because it was antiquated in the way it was built. It was well built, it's been there all these years, but it doesn't meet today's standards. So if we're going to try to restore it or reuse it or repurpose it, you'd have to tear it back to the bare walls and put it back and there'd be nothing left, and that's ultimately what they're doing. It's a little bit like the gas station, you have to tear it down. Now the Donna's house, and I worked on that. I did some work on the hospice house too, but that should retain. It's unique. It was part of her. And like I said at the Planning Commission, unique thing about her house and the hotel, you couldn't rebuild either of them today by today's standard. And quite frankly, that's one of the reasons I kept Mission Ranch out of the city, because they asked us to annex in, because they couldn't have done it under the codes to save it. Now, I've done a lot of work at the Pine Inn for the McKees, and I'm proud of that work because you can't see what I did. That's restoration and preservation. You can't do that with this hotel. The most important historical event that's going on tonight is we have the third generation ownership of the same family that, like the Leidig family, want to tear this down and build something for the next 100 years. That's what Eastwood wanted to do at Mission Ranch. That's what they want to do here. And they should be allowed to do that without restraint. Thank you.
Thank you.
Getting old. Neil Cruz, and addressing the Historic Resources Board, you have a very important job for the village of Carmel, and I respect what you do. A lot of work has been done on this, but I have some questions. I'm confused about some things. I can't figure it out. I do design work in Carmel, and when I talk to a client, I say, where are we at with historic? Are you on the registry? Where? They say, well, yeah, we have to find out if we're going to be determined to be historic or not. That's the very first thing we do. Absolutely, day one. I say, let's get that historic, because if you're deemed historic, we're going to go down this road. If you're not deemed historic, we're going to go down that road. Not once has a client ever told me, no, I don't want the historic determination. Let's do the design first. So how did that happen? Another thing that strikes me as a little strange, I've always been under the impression that before I was ever able to make a presentation to the Planning Commission, I had to have that historic determination. And what the Planning Department would say to me is they would say, well, Neil, if we take up the time of the Planning Commission and the public with a meeting, and then a month later we find out that you're the opposite of the determination that you assumed you were, that whole meeting has been a waste of time. Okay? It's been a complete waste of everybody's time because you did not have your historic determination before you went to the public. In this case, that was reversed. I'm confused. Why did that happen? This morning I got up to read the information. We have had the determination from staff was apparently made on December 18th, which I believe is today. And I started to get into this, and I realized I don't have nearly enough time. I would like to tell you that I've talked to several other people that said, Neil, I don't have the time to get into this. This is Christmas and everything else. So what I'm going to ask for is, under the circumstances, would you please continue this project and give everybody time to read all of the documentation, to get their questions answered, to talk to people. I've talked to 2 people that want to talk to 2 other historic people that they know. We need the time. This is a major project that's going to affect Carmel for a very long time into our future. Please, give us more time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I wasn't going to get up and speak, but Mr. Cruz raised some issues here that I felt like I need to address too. My name's Carolyn Hardy. I've served on the city council with Carrie. Just random thoughts about this. I had no problem getting through 228 pages of that packet. And you can look at anybody who has the wherewithal can skim through and read the staff report and some of the documents and get the whole drift. So this asking for a continuance is bogus. You know, I'm busy baking, I'm busy addressing Christmas cards. I still had time for this packet, and I hope you did too. Mr. Cruz is not an active contractor. His license is inactive. He hasn't been bonded since 1999, and I'm not sure how much weight to put to his testimony. And in reading the packet, it's clear to me, as staff has put forward, this hotel is not historic. And Carrie and her family have always known the house is, and that has never been an issue. But I'm glad to see that they're recording it, that it would be historic. But let's move forward with this hotel. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we close the meeting to the public? No. Oh, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Honorable Board, Kent Seavey, Historic Preservation Consultant, one of the peer reviewers of this particular project for the record. I'd like to remind everybody here that age alone does not qualify a property for historic designation in the state of California. And that within CEQA, it says there are two important factors that have to be taken into consideration: the integrity of the resource and its significance. Interestingly enough, the law says if it lacks integrity, then it can have all the significance in the world, but it doesn't qualify. By the same token, if it lacks significance, it can have all the integrity. So one cancels the other. In this instance, the evaluation, particularly of Dr. Lempert's peer review, I think I'll finish, hopefully, the remarks of the evening. It must be pointed out that beyond the facade, there are almost no further architectural references either to Bavaria or to Tudor Revival. By contrast, once a visitor enters a parking lot where saunas, pool, parking, and general room access occur, the character of the property is that of a large, conventional motor hotel with unremarkable stylistic features of such commercial buildings constructed between the 1950s and the 1980s. And as to its art, Albro was a marvelous WPA painter, came down here in, I think, 37 and spent time, but she was not a master. And that the work she did on the building has been, quotes, refreshed or repainted, not by a qualified restoration individual, simply painted over to keep it shiny. Takes this away. So it lacks integrity and lacks significance.
Thank you. Any other members in the room care to comment? Okay, seeing none, are there any people that are attending online that wish to comment?
I don't see anyone, Mr. Chair.
No? Okay, then we'll close the discussion and bring it back to the board. I think we all agree we have two issues to determine. The first is the house, the second is the hotel. I think we can probably split that decision up, vote on one and then vote on the other following discussion. So any discussion from members of the board?
I just had a question, I guess, for Marnie. She must respond to the process sequence and how that was done.
Yeah, so the first step in our process is always the historic evaluation. And that is certainly what we did. We do not have a formal design review application right now. We certainly are anticipating one. And it's really the purview of the owners if they want to engage design services and see, what might be possible on their property. Certainly the city wouldn't process a design review application without knowing the historic status.
Okay, thanks. Discussion. Should we do the house first? Let's focus on the house first. Let's have discussion on the house. So we all agree that was, date it was built and the time period and some of the qualifying things. So any discussion on the house being eligible or ineligible for historic status?
I think it's obviously eligible for historic status in many, many ways.
I agree. It's unique, it's interesting, it should be qualified as historic.
Okay, so do we want to vote on that first? Is there a motion to bring that forward?
I would just add that I think the main character defining part of the house is the hyperbolic paraboloid roof, and that really sets it apart as the only one in Carmel, at least Carmel-by-the-Sea. And the house itself is I'd never actually been to the back of it, which is also quite interesting how it relates to the hotel. So I'm excited for the fact that the owners want to keep that and restore that. It'll be interesting to see how that's done, and I'm sure they'll do a great job. So I support its eligibility and it being placed on the historic inventory.
Okay. So do we have a formal motion, or can that constitute a motion? You want the number?
So we don't have a resolution number, but you can certainly use that as your motion to support the listing.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move to place it on the historic inventory of Carmel-by-the-Sea.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Can we have a vote, please?
Board Member Dyer,
Yes.
Board Member Goodhue,
Yes?
Board Member Pomeroy,
Yes.
and Chair Croman.
Yes.
And just a reminder to speak into the mic so we can all hear you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Also, before we go into deliberations, I believe we're on the webinar tonight. Is that, we are not?
Not tonight.
Okay, so I think there were some technical difficulties with Zoom. There may be some folks that want to make comments that were not able to raise their hand. So if the board wants to entertain that.
Okay. Certainly, we can go back out to the people on Zoom. If you have a comment, please feel free to make a comment. Ms. Wendt, do you want to go first? I think you're muted.
Can we provide any guidance to Julie on how to unmute?
I'm trying to unmute her right now.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, it said the host was not allowing unmute, so that's why I couldn't speak. I'm assuming you can hear me now?
We can.
Okay, so I sent an email this afternoon. I think you probably all received it. I'd just like to add a few comments also. Wanted to thank you for your service for the city, your service to the city, your time tonight, and for promoting historic preservation in Carmel, which I strongly believe in. And I started on the HRB in 2001. So that was well before the city-approved local coastal plan, which brought to the city a professional historic preservation program that uses state criteria and national criteria for qualifying a property as historic. Carmel also qualified as a certified local government, which says to other cities in California that we take preservation seriously, and our decisions are based on California qualifying criteria and not personal opinions. So several architectural historians have submitted their analyses for the Hofs's Hotel, and all agree that the hotel does not rise to a level necessary to achieve historic designation. And this may disappoint some of you in the audience or on the board because you have a fondness for the Pink Hotel, but please do not undermine the legitimacy of Carmel's preservation program by reverting back to the, what I call the embarrassing days before the LCP was approved, where the common sentiment was, it's old and it's cute, and so therefore it's historic. So I urge you to issue a determination of ineligibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other members of the public on Zoom that would like to comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it back to the board. All right, discussion amongst the board. Can I set some some thoughts on ground rules a little bit? You know, both in Ms. Clovis's and in the staff's assessment, we talk about structural integrity or integrity, you know, from the original design, and then a lot of the timelines that we've seen start way back in 1948 with the original buildings. I think what we're talking about is the hotel as it was configured in 1958, 1967, and so why we're comparing it back to the original design of 1948 and things like that, I don't think it's worth, honestly. I just don't think it's great staff work. Then also, I would think that it would be worthwhile for us talking about the relevance of the people that constructed it, the artists, and things like that, as well as, you know, best example. So maybe we can use that as a framework to guide us as we have a discussion. Esther, you were going to start off.
Oh, I was going to start off?
I thought you were.
No. I'm really torn on this one. I can understand the input from the family. I'm sorry, is it not on? Can you hear me now? Hold it closer. Okay, all right. I can understand the input from the family. I can understand the viewpoint of the people who want to preserve what is there. In many ways, you could say it's typically Carmel. But I understand that structurally and as far as access goes, maybe that's not possible. I don't know. I'm not a contractor, so I couldn't tell you. So as I say, it's a tough one.
Good.
I agree that it's cute and it's old, but that doesn't fit the criteria for being historic. So I would agree that it's not historic.
Okay.
I actually agree with the staff report, pretty exhaustive amount of reports from different historians, and I agree with the historic evaluation by Meg Clovis. You know, I think it has, we can talk about this a little bit, but I think it has lost its architectural integrity. And then I guess one of the questions is, was it the original building and how it's been added on to significant? And I would just, I guess, make an argument that I see it as almost tacked on Bavarian revival. And when you see a building from multiple sides, not just the street, which you're able to do with this building, it has no coherence. And I think part of design excellence is to have something that holds together as a coherent in terms of style, in terms of you know, how it looks from all the different sides. And when you certainly look in the front, you have this one vision of it, and you turn to the back, and it's basically, you can tell that the building and the basic design of it had nothing to do with the stylistic impressions on the front. So I never thought, I think it was significant to begin with, but certainly with all the additions and how they come together, it's a mishmash of stuff. You know, I certainly, as I mentioned before, I certainly agree that the house is significant, but the building itself, I just don't think holds together. And so I would agree with staff and the historic evaluation. that it's not eligible for the inventory.
I think that's very true. The design integrity is simply not there, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. Robert Jones, historic contact statement. Ralph Steen, historic contact statement. Wilcox, historic contact statement. Certainly, Maxine Albro I would disagree with some of the discussions that we've had here that she's not a master. I mean, she's definitely a glass ceiling breaker and, very, very well thought of artist. My biggest concern with all that being said, and I do think that the hotel, the facing hotel has integrity, but I would agree with a key thing that you mentioned, Eric, which is if you see it from one side, it has one look, and if you see it from the other side, it's got a very, very different look, and they're not in contrast with each other. So I think those things together, a little bit of a juxtaposition, but I would also agree at this point, after a lot of reading, that I appreciate this board for doing all the reading and looking at all the different angles of this. I would agree as well with the staff's assessment that it's probably beyond what we would need to see in a building to be qualified as historic.
And I would just add, in terms of the people that are mentioned in the context statement, like Robert Jones, who's done some excellent work in this area, I think we as a board have to look, when those people come before us, or their work comes before us, is it of their best work? Is it of the standard that made them part of the context statement? I just don't see this as one of his, a building that rises to that level. Yeah. In terms of the artwork, I would probably say the same thing. I'm not as familiar with the mural artists, but I guess people have said this about the building itself, but I would say the murals are quite cute, but I think that's about it.
Definitely not her best work, if you look at some of her other work. Okay, any further discussion amongst the board? If not, we can go ahead and make a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion that the Hofs's House Inn Hotel is not eligible for the City of Carmel-by-the-Sea's historic inventory.
I'll second it.
Okay, can we have a vote, please?
Board Member Dyer,
Yes.
Board Member Goodhue,
Yes.
Board Member Pomeroy,
Yes.
and Chair Croman.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, can we have the director's report, please?
So I don't have anything to report this evening, other than to just thank the board for your service this year, for all the time that you have put into reading packets and participating. I certainly couldn't do this without you, and just want to wish you all happy holidays.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, can we please keep the noise down in the room? I think on that note as well, Marty, I mean, you and the staff have really done yeoman's work, made our job a lot easier than it would have been otherwise, and we appreciate everything that you guys have done, throughout the entire year. It's been great.
All of those 200 and some pages.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, do we have any future agenda items? Okay. Then I think we can adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did that